Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished guests, all participating members of the platform, a pleasant good afternoon. For all who do not know me, my name is Tyler Foster, humble individual who has a very extraordinary testimony to give today. But before I do, I'll ask Mr. Nicardo Wilson and Mr. Onika Nevins to please take your position at a very special lady of mine, and working at Flow as a customer service sales rep. While I started, it was a bit turbulent, shaky. I wasn't doing so well in my courses. My GPA dropped all the way to 3.1. But I realized that there was no more time. There was no more time for getting your GPA any lower than that. So I decided to buckle down. So in 2015 spring, my GPA started to climb. But something traumatic happened to me in fall of 2015. I lost my two sisters. They were both murdered on the same day, and it was a bit hard for me. A person should know, when you decide to take on university, especially coming to a day university, you tend to give up your independence. And you have to be dependent on others. So I yearned for my independence. So I decided to take a break and go to a distant land called Kingston. I got a job working at court's head office as a collections agent. But for some reason, I yearned to be back in school. So I decided to register at UTech. And I got accepted. I did a semester. It wasn't easy for me at all because I realized being on student loan, when you register for an institution, you're tied to that institution. When I went to UTech, I got the shocking story that I had to pay for my tuition there. If it wasn't for the help of my younger adopted brother, O'Shane Davidson, and a very close friend of mine, Miss Jarrett, they helped me to pay my tuition by getting scholarships for me and grants. And I did well. I was paying rent, which was very high. I mean, it was huge. But while going to school, my grades were good, but my mom took ill again. Her blood count went all the way down to was looking after her while I was away. However, I came back the following semester and decided to stay with her. A couple months later, at my uncle's funeral, before my uncle's funeral, I heard that the friend that looked after my mom was murdered. I found out on the day of my uncle's funeral. It was very traumatic and shocking for me. But if it wasn't for individuals such as Khalila Dolat and Mrs. Small from the computer department, but I made the mistake and mentioned to one of my supervisor or trainee personnel that I'm planning on coming back to NCU to finish my degree. The following day, the manager for that department pulled me out of the middle of training, and she said to me that you have two choices. It's either one, you go back to school, or you stay. I had nothing to say to her on that day. The following day, I had something to say, but I said it very silently. I took my resignation letter and I handed it to her because I know that there is something greater for me out there than a little paycheck. I know that I will be able to motivate others out there because persons need to know that you should not be conformed to the laws of man when you have God in your heart. As the great Christian academician once said in Romans 12:1 and 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. That is what you all should have in your heart today. Do not let the noise of individuals out there outshine or cloud your voice of purpose in this world. You are set out there to be a pinnacle of God's light. You have a great responsibility. It is not a light one. It is a heavy one, but guess what? With God, you can pull through. All right? As Carla Harris once said, not Carla Harris, Lisa Nichols once said, sorry, everything you've been through, gone through, prayed through, everything is a setup for your next best season. In the way you forgive the perceived and the unforgivable, the way you love the perceived and the unlovable, the way you accept what seems to be unacceptable, the way you embrace after you've been betrayed is the way you will lead us. Your light belongs to everyone and will be illuminated because you're bold enough and obedient enough to let your light shine. So let your light shine, people. Every cure you sort out, every program you write, every sermon you preach, every student you teach, just ensure that there's one important ingredient while you're delivering. Ensure that there's God in the mix. There's nothing you can do without Him. You're talking to an individual that contemplated suicide. You're looking at an individual that gave up. I almost dropped out of school, and I'm here today. My mom is beside me today. After living on the dialysis machine for 2.5 years, she's standing next to me today. But God. Before I go, I want to mention one important thing about my mom. After spending 5 years at Belfield High, I graduated without one subject to my name. But as part of the theme has transformation, when my mom saw that CXC slip with the 4 grade 4s on it, it's not the mother that will box down their child. She looked at the slip and she sat down on the bed and she cried. Maybe that's why I'm such a crybaby. But that tear that she shed transformed my life. When she took me up to Homewood and Mr. Bailey looked at me and said, up there is full, there is no space to take him in, send him to youth service. She didn't give up. Maybe that's why I'm a perseverer, because she never gave up, so why should I? After graduating without a subject from one school, when I went to Homewood, I graduated with 7 subjects and an honors diploma. And remember, I mentioned that my GPA dropped to 3.1. It is now 3.62. But God. And one final thing about this very, very powerful woman standing beside me. I call her my best study partner ever. I remember studying a computer course called Fundamentals of Security. And there's a word called cryptography. And she couldn't pronounce it. And she was like, Ty, take time with me, because I never finish high school. And I said to her, Mommy, you may never finish high school. Look at me when I'm talking to you, please. You may never finish high school, but you have helped me to get this bachelor's degree. So, guys, as I close, just as how individuals have motivated not only me, but you all by extension, be that motivational factor out there, because the world is in trouble. It is in serious trouble. Persons are dying everywhere. Just yesterday, I heard a bike man crash under a truck at Porus. One of my cousins was supposed to come to my graduation on Sunday, and she's unable to come because one of her sister-in-law died in a car accident because of reckless driving by the person who was driving the car. The world is in trouble. It needs prayer. And there's no stronger weapon in this world than prayer. Every time when I go and do my exams, I say, Mommy, before I go through the door, pray for me. Because the exam them rough. We have been through some of the most existential threats imaginable. We are talking, think of a football game, hat-trick sectionals, intercepting assignments, just to name a few. And when you think it is all done, you receive a bowl of popcorn quizzes. Trust me, man, what else but prayer? So, as I close, final thing as I close, as what Carla Harris once mentioned, a song is not a song until you sing it. A bell is not a bell until you ring it. Power was not put in your hands to stay. Power isn't power until you give it away. Thank you.